right now, we're going to talk to some very, very experienced, very talented artists all about the creatures of Star Wars The Force Awakens, how they conceptualized these creatures, and how these creatures were executed for what eventually ended up on screen. How many of you have seen the Art of Star Wars The Force Awakens book? Great. Well, we've got the author of that book here. He's one of the panelists as well, so we're going to talk a lot about the art. So I want to bring them on stage so we can get right into the presentation. A lot of cool stuff to look at. Please welcome author Phil Shostak and the artist, the creature concept artist of Star Wars The Force Awakens, right here. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Hey, guys. Welcome. Doctor. So welcome. So I thought we'd just start by having everyone introduce themselves, your titles, and a little bit about yourself, your background and your role on The Force Awakens. Go ahead. You want to start with you, Phil?
Hi, I'm Phil Shostak. I'm the author of The Art of Star Wars The Force Awakens. Been with Lucasfilm for 8 years now. Doesn't feel like 8 years. And I started working with George Lucas up at Skywalker Ranch, running his art department up there, and then eventually transitioned onto the new films. And this is my first book, but my official title with Lucasfilm is Senior Content and Assets Specialist, which is a...
And author.
Yes, and author.
Awesome, thank you.
Hi, my name is Martin Rizard, and I've been working in the film industry for the last 20 years. I've worked on The Matrix, on episode 2, episode 3, when I was living in Sydney, and lots of various films since. I've worked mainly as a sculptor, sometimes a concept artist, makeup artist as well. And yeah, that's about it.
Thanks, Martin.
Hello, my name's Luke Fisher. I'm a concept designer and a sculptor on Force Awakens. I've been, again, similar to Martin really, working in film for sort of 20 years nearly. Worked on the Harry Potters, some of the Harry Potter films, Guardians of the Galaxy before this, and Prometheus was another one. Yeah, and that's me.
Hi, my name is Jaclyn Davis. I'm a concept designer on Star Wars Force Awakens. I've been in the industry for 20-odd years, weirdly enough, mainly in commercials and a bit of film. I did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but then had a big stint in commercials, and then suddenly found myself back in the world of film and Star Wars.
Wow.
Hi, I'm Ivan Manzella, and I'm a creature concept designer and sculptor as well, same as these guys.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay,
I'm sure. I've been doing it for 27 years, so and started at Henson's when I was 16. Work experience.
I was going to say, you must have all started when you were 7, because I hear 20 years, and it's amazing, youthful, creative energy.
Time travelers, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's so much experience in the film industry on stage, but I wanted to talk about The Force Awakens, obviously, specifically, and your role in the overall production. So can you explain to everybody where you fit in the production process and kind of the service that you provide from beginning to end?
So we all work for, the 4 of us work for the creature department run by Neil Scanlon. We're an in-house design team, so all the designs happen within the department, they then get built in the department. And so we see that process the whole way through, from beginning to when it gets onto...
So you see the script, or you see rough concepts or ideas, and you actually do the concept art.
That's
from
right,
the very beginning. Yes.
Yeah, it happens different ways sometimes. We'll be briefed by the director. We get to read the script, so we get a sense of how that character fits in.
I mean, some of the briefs could be pretty open. Yeah, there's sort of like one word. I need some guys to be in this, Jakku set, and that's quite open. Otherwise, or others could be much more specific. I need, like with Maz, or so.
Yeah, we could have. Yeah, as Jake's saying, like a very open brief where you're really just left to be as creative as you desire, or sometimes the briefs are very tight and you're working to a very specific set of things.
Now, let me ask you guys, are the very specific briefs that you're given easier? Because it seems like, when you're just given a wide open canvas of like, we need creatures on Jakku, go. it's kind of is that a freeing prospect or a terrifying one? Because you need to kind of, where do you start?
It varies a lot, really. It depends how you're feeling on the day. You know, you turn up to work. Sometimes it all happens, and you're feeling the kind of mode.
Yeah, most days it doesn't.
I mean, so, yeah. I mean, particularly, I think the very first thing we were sort of asked to sort of deal with was Jakku, and that was obviously a desert world. And because you had, you know, The Force Awakens is a homage, I suppose, to the original Star Wars, and we wanted to sort of get some of that feeling back into Star Wars. It was one of the easier sort of areas to start with. So in that respect, it was like, oh, this is cool. I can do this. I can create some really cool Star Wars characters in that area.
That is one of the biggest challenges, really, is just to feel like what we're creating fits into that world, and you know, you could put that character into Jedi or Empire, and he would sort of happily sit there. So finding that aesthetic is one of the biggest challenges, really.
How do you make it new and original, but also emotionally familiar, right? It's kind of that fine line that you have to walk. Is that how you would describe?
I suppose so. There's quite a lot of times we appraise our own work. We look at things and we internally just think, you know, it's hard to sort of quantify, but you'd ask yourself, and we'd ask each other, is that Star Wars? And you can't say why sometimes. You just go, no, it's a bit Star Trek, or it's a bit something else, you know, but it doesn't somehow seem to fit in that world. And we'd sort of work on it or put it to one side, you know.
Well, shall we take a look at some art? What do you say? You want to look at some? Let's take a look here. So let's look at some concept design that you guys came up with. You mentioned Jakku. Is that where we're going to start?
Yeah. Now you'll have seen some of this stuff in Phil's book, and we've added a few extra ones which you won't have seen.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of exclusives here today.
Yeah. So again, the top sort of image here just shows about half of these images are sort of, give me some, this is JJ, give me some characters that could sort of work in that area. And you can sort of see in my image in the top left, there's what became Constable Zuvio, but he was just one of several kind of cool characters that could have inhabited that world. And then below that, you've got the sort of little fewer guys.
So in the bottom left corner is kind of my take on a different type of Jawa, you know, or a sort of Jawa-esque character. Again, we're sort of populating this dusty planet. And the idea behind these was they're scavengers, and I wanted that to kind of reflect in their costume. Like they've collected this stuff, and they've built these masks themselves from what they've found. And in true sort of Jawa style, I dressed up, the picture in the middle is my son dressed up in a few bags and an old coat. But, you know, that was kind of the inspiration into those images, really. And, yeah, he's here today, Dan.
Yeah, and then we had some more specific sort of requirements, like with the steel-pecking bird, which was, I believe it was Spielberg had suggested this idea.
Steven Spielberg's idea. Yes. Yeah, we got confirmation on that. Yeah, Steven Spielberg originated that idea in speaking to JJ. So
the idea was just that there was a bird that was just literally just a metal-pecking bird on a scavenger planet.
Absolutely, just that simple. And then these guys took the ball and ran with it.
So again, I was just finding sort of, you know, it's something along the lines of a vulture which would stick its head into this oily, sort of the guts of the junk that was found on Jakku. I gave it again, all the way through this, we kept sort of finding that the sort of mantra was simple. So his head, I was just thinking, it's got to be a really simple shape. It's got to be like a chisel. It's got to be hard and blunt. And it's a very sort of simple parallelogram silhouette. And that's the one that got, I mean, there was about sort of a dozen different ideas, perhaps, that got to that point. And then the bottom one is the little creature that pops up just as BB-8 rolls away. There's a sort of little, do you want to say anything about that one?
Yeah, no, that was just a little, JJ wanted to kind of just go really back to old school, almost like the trash compactor in Star Wars.
Right, the Dianoga,
so that was just made, they said you got £100 to make it. I said I'll do it for 50. And it was just built up with latex and cotton, really simple.
I mean, some of the design, I mean, you designed that bit, but then a lot of it came out through the actual construction of it as well, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we did these originally, and JJ said, I don't want to see any drawings. It was like, okay, thanks. But I needed somewhere to sort of start, so I pretty much made it up as I went along. But that was a good, just sort of a starting point, you know, sort of had little bladders in there as well and stuff. But yeah, old school.
I'm amazed at two things in listening to you talk. The number of work hours that went into just this one slide is tremendous. Then the amount of time it spends on film is oftentimes, or in the case of Constable Zubio, is very small.
Yeah.
But then the life after that in the Star Wars lore, in the figures, in the books, and here at Star Wars Celebration is tremendous. What does that process feel like for you guys when you see all that on screen?
Well, the thing is, although you may not see these things, we only see them very briefly, it's all part of selling that universe and making it believable. And these characters may just be in the background rolling around, or they may just pass by the camera. But it's so important that they're there so that it feels real, it feels like Star Wars, and you buy into that world, really.
The details, it's all about the details in Star Wars. And sure enough, you'll see someone walking around dressed as one of these characters. Yeah.
I think Martin spotted one earlier.
Which character? Which was it?
I just ran into a Sarko Plank earlier on.
Sarko Plank. Oh.
Amazing, yeah.
You have a Sarko Plank slide, don't you?
Yeah, we've got it further
We'll
down.
get to Sarko Plank.
We'll get to Sarko, okay.
Skip on.
Sure.
Yeah.
Should we continue in the right order?
So yeah, these are some more droids from.
Yeah, these are two designs for droids for Jakku. The one on the left, Neil Scanlon had invited some stilt walkers to our workshop, and just to show us what they could do, with the idea that we could dress them up as creatures or droids. And one of them had some like extendable crutches, so he was sort of walking on all fours. And so we photographed them, and that really came from, inspired by seeing what they could do. And so the idea was that that could be a very lightweight costume, that they could sort of walk around in the background. And there's the one on the right. We were trying to find designs and purposes for droids around the junkyard. And I thought maybe there could be a droid that's welding, like rebuilding stuff, or improving things so they can be sold on. And that's where he came from, really. And again, you're sort of considering how the performer would operate that. And in a kind of Fred Flintstone style, he's inside, walking along with his feet, and that's what propels the droid forward. And he has a couple of handles so he can operate the arms and the head.
So I love knowing that a lot of human performance and puppetry was worked into even as early as the design phase. You considered how the characters could move and then designed around that.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of our department, the fact that we're working as a whole with the creature effects department are coming up with the ideas and sort of collaborating with the puppeteers and the designers. We're not just sort of sitting remotely away from all that. We can incorporate that at a very early stage.
Is that pretty typical in terms of working with performers and working in that order, where you'll do a workshop with a performer, do the art, or does it vary from show to show? Does that make sense?
The setup of our department?
No, the setup of having performers come in, do a workshop, like stilt walkers, for example.
Yeah, it doesn't happen that often. I mean, the stilt walkers was this kind of individual thing. Just sort of show us what they could do. It's not something we'd used much before, really. Yeah. So.
That makes sense. Oh, this is another great example of puppetry. And of course, I remember when we saw this was it the first in the Force for Change? Is that right, Phil?
Yes.
And
I
then
think that was its debut.
what was the
and
other?
then on stage at Celebration, was it?
San Diego Comic-Con?
San Diego Comic-Con?
Yeah. What a breathtaking image this was.
I mean, we were just trying to find ways we could break up the human form. And I was inspired by, you get these sort of Halloween festival costumes with guys in gorilla suits, like a gorilla carrying a cage. Have you ever seen that?
No.
There's a guy sitting in a cage like this, but he's actually...
Oh, right.
So I thought, let's just rework that idea. So I put the performer, I mean, bless him, Aidan Cook was amazing. He is inside that cage with the... I can't remember the name of well, there's a little guy on the head, and Ivan, I think, after I'd drawn that picture, Ivan thought it looked like the
Wart from outside.
Wart
from outside
Return of the
Jabba's
Jedi.
palace.
So
Right.
we resculpted it, and it is one of those wart creatures that sits in the third cage up, and Aiden looks out through the mouth.
And that's in Abu Dhabi in the 120-degree heat. So, yeah.
And his last name is Cook. Is that what I am to understand? A running
Aiden
joke on the
Aiden
set.
Cook.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cooking in Abu Dhabi. Yes. Well, that's fantastic. Here's Sarcoplank. Yes. Yeah. Let's talk about Sarcoplank. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just ran into him, as I said earlier on. He's here.
Hey.
But yeah, this is when we were populating Jakku. JJ wanted to see various studies of desert-like dwelling creatures, and this one got picked out of a bunch that I did. And I like the fact that it's very ambiguous in its look. Is it mechanical? Is it organic? You don't really know what it's. And then so I did the original sketch, and then Jake took over and expanded into the costume and the look. I think the gun is actually one of your design, Luke, wasn't it?
I did the gun.
Yeah. Oh, yours.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And what was quite, because these three guys all sculpt, and I don't, unfortunately.
Yeah, Luke sculpted it.
Yeah, Luke's sculpting it there.
I wouldn't have done it that way, but you know.
But JJ would pick sort of like, Martin's picture on the left-hand side is would select, that would be up on a big wall. JJ would pick that, boom, we've got it. And then we'd have to sort of flesh it out. But then these guys are sort of then ensconced in other designs or sculpting. So I ended up doing a little bit extra work on them, sort of giving them full bodies.
Yeah, because the design process for us who are sculpting as well was very very quick and very like, because we very early on we were sculpting, so there was a lot of stuff sculpt, and then at lunch break we would just go up to the office and go, whoa, let's just come up with something, then go back down, and so it was a bit like that.
Cool.
Yes.
Lugger Beast. So again, that's just more. We'd done the big beast, the Hapabore, which was again the Hapabore was something we wanted to do, which was like the Bantha is in Star Wars. It's an elephant. And JJ's like, well, we need to do something like that. We need something big, and you can't do much more than elephants, really. There's not many other big creatures. So we did the Hapabore with 5 performers, and then we sort of thought, let's do something like Warhorse. So this is 2 performers, and it's just an exercise in that. And now with digital, CGI, we can do rod removal and leg removal. So there were 2 performers, actual legs in grey. You would have seen them on set, but they rubbed them out. And they're just some reiterations. JJ, initially this was mechanical, and JJ wanted it to be a creature. So we kind of came to a halfway, because we had the Hapabore. We thought, we've got one big creature, let's have something with some mechanics. So it became what it is.
Now, was Tito a separate idea from that, or this was another example in the script where you knew that Tito needed to be on a mount or something, or did he just combine those?
Tito just ended up being on that. I think, Tito, as far as I know, I don't know, Tito was a character.
Yes, and a separate design, right? That just ended up on the back of the Lugger Beast. Yeah.
So sometimes he'll put together a whole series of shots based on, I love that design. Let's put Tito on that.
Yeah.
And that all just comes from out of your creative minds under pressure.
I have to say Tito actually ended up. We did several Titos, but I have to say Tito came out of costume.
Oh, I see.
So yeah.
And then Justin fixed it.
So you have some colleagues out here in the audience. Do they want to raise their hands? Where are they? Are they out here?
There they
are. Hiding amongst you are some more artists from The Force Awakens.
Shall we? Okay.
Yikes.
Encore Plat.
So this is a blobfish, is that right?
Yes. So basically, JJ's daughter came up with the idea of she wanted to see a blobfish type alien. So that's where it began, that concept. So that's the only picture I actually drew, and JJ quite liked it. So from then on, I think I did a series of clay heads. I wanted to originally do it as a mechanical mask, and then. So I did a series of heads, but then Simon Pegg got involved, and they wanted to do it as a makeup. So the challenge was trying to get that design and condense it down onto a makeup, which was pretty tricky because you've got eyes and mouth, and you're kind of limited to what you can do. So it was a bit of a struggle, but yeah.
So you have to set in the eyes, and you have to.
Yeah, you just have to fit it so Simon had his eyes, had his mouth. So it changed the character quite a bit. But the good thing is, in the movie, they actually digitally spread his eyes a bit and digitally do his mouth. So it kind of gets a bit closer to, the original design.
They take it back to where you're. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's so
Because
interesting.
in Abu Dhabi it was so hot, he could only wear a pullover mask. He wasn't in prosthetics because it would have been too hot. So that was kind of just. Yeah, they shot the close-ups in Pinewood.
I
But
see.
in Abu Dhabi, it was just a pull-on, so they had to CG in those bits anyway. So.
Right. Interesting.
And that's the costume that Jake designed, so it's a kind of a crossover where we work together. Do you want to say anything about that? No? No?
It's an industrial look. Sure, yes.
Yeah, and I was going to say Justin and Wardo, who are there again. Justin did the hands for him, and me and Wardo did the body. Yay.
Okay, should we... Oh, yeah. Right, this is the Abednego Race. Now, this is a little pet project of mine where I really quite wanted to... I was sort of... You look at the Star Wars universe, and humans are very prevalent everywhere, and the creatures are just sort of here and there. And I thought it'd be cool if we could get another species, another race of aliens that were just as prevalent, perhaps, as humans. And so I just drew them in different sorts of, just look, JJ, look, they're wearing this. And eventually he broke down and said, and Eloasti is that's my initial sketch of Eloasti. And then Martin, I did these very loose sketches. They're quite cartoony, and it was sort of perhaps down to Martin and Julian, the sculptors, that then, as you can see in the maquette, on the sort of created the actual real form and defined that look.
The maquette was for the holo, which is just underneath the maquette, and it was a really quite large size performance. It was performed by Ian White, so I just did a maquette before starting the real size sculpt, just to kind of know where we were going, to get it approved, and to kind of fill in the blanks that were in not that there are any in Jake's design, but just to bring it into the real world a little bit.
No, you did. You took it to the next level. Yeah.
Oh.
Great stuff.
And these are the creatures that have the Beastie Boys inspired names.
Right.
Eloasti, I think, came from JJ, and then Pablo named the rest of them, just taking the ball and running with it. And Rue down, and Ilko, Munica,
Brass Monkey or something.
Yeah, Brass Monkey.
Yeah. He's a senator, I think.
He is.
Yeah. BB-8.
BB-8. How many of you saw the panel yesterday with the droids of the Force Awakens? You see that? So this is a great complement to that. So a lot of the coloring and design came from you guys, and then Josh and Matt.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Well, I mean, BB-8 came from Chris Holtzman at ILM and conversations with JJ, and I was, but it needed, the design at that stage is recognizable. It's in the book, in Phil's book, is recognizable as BB-8. You look at a picture, yes, it's BB-8. But we just took it, to another, just a little bit further. We sort of reined some of the ideas back in to perhaps make them a little bit more sit in the sort of R2-D2 styling. There were considerations. I worked quite closely with Josh, who is the mechanical engineer, Neil, obviously, who is in charge, and Brian, who is the puppeteer. And a lot of that design process, the actual sort of physical design process of BB-8, informed me as to perhaps, like for instance, having these panels, it just helped break up as he moved. We wanted to create this omnidirectional feel. So you get a sense of movement. I think on some of the original designs, it was a far more busy design, and by the time it span, it would have been a blur, whereas these big, bold sections were sort of perhaps easier to read on film. And so there's a lot of consideration of that. There's a lot of consideration. We took away the anthropomorphic face. Originally had sort of 2 eyes and a mouth, and I sort of pushed it towards this mono-cyclopic eye look.
A bit more like R2 in that way.
Sorry?
Bit more like R2-D2 in
Yeah,
that way,
exactly. So he's got a little more nods to R2-D2. And then Martin took over and did some work in ZBrush and sort of made it a little bit more
It was like I was an in-between between Jake's design and the prop store.
Prop shop.
Prop shop who did the printing. So
Yeah.
that was that digital sculpting stage where in which we refined some of the designs on the panels, working with Jake, going, which one is that, you know? And I did a couple of variations on the head. At one stage, there was a big kind of pack on the back of BB-8's head, which could have been used as a handle.
Handle, wasn't it? Yeah.
But it was a bit, it just broke the lines a bit, so we got rid of it.
Interesting. Just pick them up like a suitcase.
And if you want to know,
Time to go.
the little picture on the middle right-hand side, the little dots that are sort of populate his body, they were meant to be little spikes that popped out. So they were meant to be like grip.
Oh, interesting.
Well, they were meant to be the sort of, there was an idea that they would be a sort of response to being attacked. They'd pop out like a pufferfish.
Oh, yeah.
And then they sort of, I don't know, it's a bit too aggressive. But we thought, quite cool. They could be sort of like extra grip. So that little image just illustrates that. And that's what those little things are.
I don't know. I could see him
Whether
crawling
they-
up a wall at some point. You know,
Wacky
Looks like a
wall.
landmine.
yeah. Great.
Cool.
Now this is interesting because these aren't creatures, but you designed
Yeah.
these as well. How did this all come about in terms of raised speeder?
I think the designs that, that were being generated elsewhere, JJ's wasn't sort of, they weren't hitting the mark for some reason. And Darren Guilford, the production designer, turned to us and said, look, he'd really love it if we could just have a go at doing it. So we all got involved and we all created lots and lots of ideas. My one got picked to be raised speeder. They built these other two on the other end. Luke did the one on the top right and the other one at the bottom. They both got built and taken to Abu Dhabi. They're all three of them working vehicles that could drive around. I mean, the inspiration for with raised speeder, I mean, again, it's simplicity. I just wanted to find a simple, silhouette. A lot of it's inspired by agricultural machinery. It's like a tractor with no wheels. And it's also perhaps a little bit of Luke's speeder just turned on its...
Right. Oh, yeah, you can definitely see that. Yeah,
a little
certainly.
bit of that.
Yeah.
And a Magnum ice cream bar. No. Have you seen that stuff on the internet?
Yeah.
People like...
No, I haven't.
It's funny little stuff you get. People like putting ice creams with racing.
Or like a USB I've seen. Yeah.
Right. I actually have a USB thumb drive of
Do they
this
make
that
a
I
USB
love.
Yeah.
They do.
Why haven't I got a USB?
I've
drive?
used it to load keynote presentations to the
to this
tech room.
very-
Literally,
Someone's
this
gotta be
very
selling it
shape.
here.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, here we go. So now we're moving into Takadana, right? We're moving into Maz's bar. Now this is such a fascinating area of the film. Well, this must have been a feast for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we were asked to populate in a sort of cantina style thing. So it was just a pool of ideas to begin with, just exploring different designs and, again, trying to find simple things that would register very quickly with the viewer, that you may not see them for that long, so it's just sort of striking designs that pop out. And these two guys were from that pool. They ended up becoming Quigold and Captain Ithano. I think JJ approached us saying he wanted two characters that Finn would have a deal with. And I think Neil Scanlon pulled these two out, offered them up, and JJ went with it. The two larger images are my designs, and then Jake then carried on
I
and
just drew a few extras to, again, flesh them out.
gave them a body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now this is great too. So what a great homage to Rolf Mcquarrie. That is a very old piece of concept art there. And I remember seeing the film and just thinking it was so fantastic that you really got that chasing view of that character going through Maz's bar there. But you can only just see his back, is that right?
Yeah, so, I mean, basically JJ just always loved that image and he kind of just wanted to create it. So, yeah, you can only see his back. I mean, the guy crouching down, you can kind of make out a little bit more. So I basically kind of just did a maquette, which is the one at the top corner there, and using Ralph McQuarrie's early versions of Chewie as well, just because we're always looking at that stuff anyway, you know, because that's where you want to get back to and make sure, you know, you're in the right place.
I think the greatest compliment that I could pay to you about this is that you see his face first on camera, right? And then he turns and runs. But even though we had never seen his face in that concept art, I knew as a viewer immediately what you were going for.
Yeah, well,
even
they
though
nailed the postures, they nailed the pose as well, pretty much in the.
But even before, but the face. I mean, it just made absolute sense. It was just such a very smart design there. So yeah, kudos.
Oh, that's Ralph Mcquarrie.
Yeah, yeah. Ah, yes.
Yeah. So this was this design. It was known now as Hurid 327, I believe, but. We knew him as Big Red, was our nickname. We often have sort of names for our characters as we develop them, and then they change and give them their formal names for the film. But anyway, this started out as a smaller sketch, and you couldn't really see his legs in my initial design. And Neil suggested we put a stilt walker into the costume. So I then developed it and incorporated the stilts. And so if you don't know, there's a performer inside this, and yeah, she's on stilts. Her arms are within the sort of red body of it, and she can puppeteer the arms within the outfit. So yeah, we developed this with the performer, starting off just with the framework and making sure she was happy moving in it, and as she built her confidence, we would build more weight into it and make it really heavy for her to perform. But she did do an amazing job. And it was also intended to go to Abu Dhabi for the Jakku set. It never actually got filmed on there, so it came back to Pinewood, and we repurposed it and used it for Mazzy's Castle. We found a moment.
Great. And of course, we recognize this creature as well from the bar.
Grumgar.
Yeah.
Who's a large-scale creature.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is another example of Ivan did the initial sketch at the top. That was picked by JJ, and then it's like, well, okay, what is it? So I thought, let's make him really big, and put this, human-sized girl next to him, and I drew a Twi'lek, but that doesn't really matter. And JJ loved this. He sort of took them to be, in the script, he had the moment with the agent informing on BB-8's presence to the
First Order.
The First Order. I was going to say Imperials then. And JJ, so it's those two. They're the ones. So and then Ivan and I worked together again on the costume, and we were a little bit influenced by Bosk and brought a little bit of that elements into his costume.
Interesting.
And he's a big puppet. He's like five people?
Yeah, I think there were 5 performers.
Yeah.
Like one on the head, one on each arm, and he
was
like
that
breathing.
big?
Yeah.
Wow. There were only 3 inside Jabba in Return of the Jedi, and you had 5.
They're all hiding behind the big chair.
Wow. If you could indulge me, I have a funny story about this
Go
creature.
on.
So we were in the studio looping The Force Awakens. I was lucky enough to be there with other voice actors, and there's a voice actor named Fred Tatasciore. He's, big booming voice, sweetest guy. He's done a ton of movies and video games, and so Matthew Wood, the sound editor, said, "Come on up and do something" when he turns his head, and he goes, there's a sound effect in the final movie, but they had him covered at one point. And on his first take, when she leaves, he turned and went, "I love you," like that. And the entire session stopped for a good 2 minutes because we had a good laugh about that. But it didn't make it into the final cut. But
some more
great
creatures here.
Yeah, again, just from the pool of designs that we were working for towards the Mazzy's Castle. Again, just looking for sort of simple designs that would read instantly, and being aware that they wouldn't be on, or possibly not be on film for too long. So, and a lot of them are sort of inspired for me by the kind of creatures that lurk in the shadows of the cantina and Jabba's palace, and it's sort of thinking about that and designing them so that they would fit within those areas. It's something we have to be conscious of as you're designing for Star Wars is, do they fit into that world? And it's just a good reference to think back, will they fit in these other areas like the Jabba's Palace?
And some of these were released, these images were released before the film. You know, some creatures actually were released in certain articles and things like that.
Yeah, Vanity Fair, I think, had a spread.
Vanity Fair had a spread. I think there might have been a shot with Warwick Davis here with this creature here. Do you ever look at some of those comments or see any of that stuff, or you know, see the emotional reactions of people, and what are your thoughts there? Or do you just avoid it altogether until they see the movie?
I'm not sure how to answer that.
I'm not either. I mean, it's very exciting to see it at that stage.
Just the hype machine. I mean, you create something, and then when it's finally released for everyone to enjoy,
the hype machine's amazing. I mean, it's just like you sit there in secrecy for a year and a half or whatever it is, and well, I can't remember what the time scale is between starting on it. It must have been 2 years between starting and it coming out, and in dribs and drabs, you know, you can't talk about it, and in dribs and drabs, bits come out, and you can say, wow, A, I worked on that, and B, you can engage in people's reaction to it, whether they love it or not, I don't know. It's just amazing to see something that you've kind of had a part in creating becoming part of somebody else's life in some way, you know.
Well, like, in sitting and meeting you today and talking about this, it strikes me that I went out and bought a Sphero BB-8 before I ever saw the movie, knew every detail of its shape, of its head, its body, and how it worked. Obviously, a different mechanic. And everyone went and did that on Force Friday, it seems, if they could find one. That just has to be an incredible feeling for you guys to see that design become part of the cultural.
I'm getting it when I'm walking out there. I've seen all these BB-8s. I still can't.
Balloons and things.
Yeah, and I think I drew this little squiggly thing, and it's being sort of reproduced 1,000-fold. It's
unbelievable.
Insane.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, you don't really know the journey they're going to take. You know, we do these drawings and we create these little creatures, and they're very much our own, and they just sit in our little workshop, our little world, and then they're kind of put out there, and people warm to them, or it's
I'm
an
pretty sure they
interesting
warm
journey
to
to
all
see.
creatures, because you end up seeing them in cosplay later on, and you know, they end up having their own comic books and stories, and you know, they just take these incredible journeys over decades. It seems. It just seems like what a wonderful thing to be able to create. Anyway,
these are some of the designs of mine that got picked up for Maz's bar. There's what we were calling him the priest at the time. That was the original artwork on the left, and then you can see the evolution when you get to the sculpting process. A lot of issues get resolved. The expression kind of gets in. As Luke was saying, you're not going to see any of those creatures on screen for very long, so we try and bring in as much character as we can in the sculpt. Even though they're mechanized, they can move. If the camera just passes over it, there is already something to start with, some kind of an expression. And those three, what we call the skitters, I think they're the Dengue sisters, and we had some wonderful puppeteers, and they were pressuring us to go, so are you going to design any puppets? So, you know, so we just gave them 3 puppets sitting at a table, and it's nice to have a group of them, because it just tells a story already. You know that there's something happening. It's always strange when there's only one single alien somewhere. And
yeah, it's nice to have that kind of range of scale as well, isn't it? I mean, these were quite small guys just sat on the tabletop, and you know, compare it to the other guy, you know, playing around with scale and just having that broad kind of universe of creatures.
and you can really feel that in the bar. You have everything from the smallest creatures to the enormous creatures. It's fantastic.
Again, more designs from Maz's Castle. Yeah, Warwick Davis played the one in the bottom corner. Do you want it? The Wallovan.
Oh, yeah, so that's Wallovan down there, and he was originally paired up with the dog from the previous image. So it was going to be almost like there was this kind of tiny character, looked like a bit of a pushover in the bar, but then he has this massive dog with him, so it wards off, you know, sort of unwanted, yeah. Okay, I'll talk about that one, I guess, right? That was, so that was the cook on the big picture. That was the cook, and JJ saw that, and he thought it kind of looked a bit like Quasimodo, so that kind of started to come into the design, the two in the middle. So one is Jake's, which is kind of the costume design, and then on the other one you can see he's got the smaller hand, and bigger hand on the other side and stuff. And
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, with repurposing, you see the guy on the bottom left, which is Luke's design, Marshmallow Head, we called him. I don't know what his name is.
I don't know if he has a name yet.
You may have seen, I don't know if you've seen any of the sort of the spy shots from 8.
I don't even know what you're talking about right now.
They're on the internet.
They're not, Jake.
Not even sure that
Yeah, I don't
exists.
think. I don't know if we can
Anyway,
comment on that.
You did not see any of it.
Repurposing.
Yeah. And speaking of
Enough said.
repurposing as well, the droid design in the middle there, originally, again, he was done for Jakku, for the sort of scrapyard area. Trying to find purposes for droids. He was like a breaking down the junk, so we built him for Jakku. He went over, and again, he didn't get shot on there, but he came back and we repurposed him, and he was serving drinks behind Maz's bar. So, if they don't find their place, they will eventually.
In classic Star Wars form, right?
In
There's
classic
always
Star
a
Wars
place for
style, yeah.
something, and cool designs are cool designs, and we've seen that throughout the years. That's great. Oh, here,
Yeah.
Maz Kanata. Yeah, give her a round of
Maz
applause.
Kanata. Yeah, so the two images on the left, the earlier ones, you can see where the development started, really. We were briefed by JJ. He described Maz, this old alien female smuggler. Had a sort of spiritual connection with the Force, although she wasn't a Jedi, and he described her as being sort of 4 foot tall. He wanted to have big eyes, possibly wearing goggles, and yeah, so that's where I started off, really. And these two sketches, JJ started warming to them, but it wasn't like we've got the winning design. The design, really, I developed it in 3D through clay maquettes. So, well, if you step on. So the image on the left was the first maquette I presented to JJ, which he really connected with. It got a bit of a thumbs up, and so I carried on developing this, and the middle image is just the continuation of that, and sort of simplifying the goggles, incorporating them into the hat, and giving it a sort of utilitarian look. And at that point, the head kind of got signed off. We'd achieved the look for Maz. So then I moved into it's like a quarter scale clay maquette. I started to explore what her figure would look like, what her proportions like. She's very, very old, and yet she's still very agile, and yeah. And then this is also where I found the costume from the maquette stage. And then this is the full-size maquette, again sculpted in clay at 4 foot. We then produced it in fiberglass and foam and painted it. Michael Kaplan in the costume department then realised my costume design and chose the fabrics, added all the bangles, and we were really sort of trying to get a sense with the costume that she's a smuggler, she's travelled the galaxy, she's seen many, many things, and it's sort of like the things that she's collected from her travels. So yeah, okay, so that. And this was the final look for Maz, and it was like the definitive reference for ILM to then take and bring to life in CGI. So they scanned this, photographed it, got all the textures, and yeah, brought it to life.
What an incredibly successful, important character in that movie. And then, of course, this is all before you know about casting, is that right? So,
yeah. As we began developing it, we didn't know who was going to be playing it. And actually, as I started sculpting the full-size figure, I think it was, I had a series of maquettes, heads that I'd been working on, and we were getting very close to the final look. We had a visit from Lupita, and she came in, and she sort of had this connection with them, and she was very sort of intimate. She was touching these sculpts, and she was saying how it reminded her of her grandmother. So she sort of had this lovely connection with it, which was nice.
Which is a compliment to the art and design team, because you really did, even though it's a completely alien creature, it's also got this, it's steeped in the familiar, you know, the shapes and the eyes and the mouth, and, you know, it's just such a warm character that you designed. Really fantastic. Just one of my favorites. Yeah. Good. Ah, the Resistance.
Yes. So we were asked to put some characters into the Rebel base. And again, thinking of purpose, what they might do. There could be ground crew. This guy's a fueler. And you can see a little bit of the development. I then did a quick maquette before I did the full-size one, which you can see in that top right. And then, just finishing the final sculpt. Mark?
That's one of the characters to the left, which I designed and developed for a Rebel base. Performed by Ian White once again, really tall guy who's also the giant in Game of Thrones, lovely guy. And you've got some of the others on the right.
what's his name? I can't remember his name. Is it Vobadan? Beaverman, that's what we called him. Again, he was an exercise in breaking up human form. So I just thought, how can we sort of get a low neck? So the performer had to sort of perform this, like, he had to stand like this.
So he's looking down
He's
the whole
looking
time.
down
and
the whole time, and the face looks that way. So he can't look down.
Jake likes to punish the performers and put them in the most awkward costumes he could design.
Great for your neck, I'm sure, after a long day of shooting.
He ends up with a very low head. So, and he got, again, repurposed some droids from Rebel Base. I will skip. So we kind of move on. I don't know. How are we doing for time? We go,
yeah. So we should press on so we can do a little time for some questions. We started a little late, so yeah, we saw the Sentry Droid here yesterday. For those of you who were here yesterday, and this was a design you came up with.
Yeah, well, this design actually came from a series of sketches. We had the idea that Kylo Ren may have his own droid, like a sort of personal droid, and then JJ selected this design and decided it would be a new form of interrogation.
Oh,
droid.
interesting.
So he's the.
And a lot of people miss him when they see the film because he's kind of just in the shadows.
In the shadows.
Yeah, he's in the shadows.
Yeah.
He's definitely there.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, and then the Vader mask. So obviously the idea was recreate the Vader mask as if it had been pulled from the ashes of the funeral pyre, and JJ wanted it to be twisted and mangled, and the three sketches there, they're just very quick sketches, just trying to get an idea of how I could sort of distort his face, keeping what we identify as Vader. You don't want to lose that iconic image, but you also want to sort of add another layer to it, and the image on the right was the first. I very quickly moved into 3D. It's very sort of complex shape, and trying to draw it, and it has its limitations in 2D. So I went into 3D, and I could see it from all angles and get a nice profile, and that was the image I showed to JJ of this maquette here. As you can see, he's got more of an open mouth. I wanted to sort of make him almost look like he's sort of screaming, really, like as all the hate and anger has been sort of leaving him from the fire.
There's an agony.
Yeah, exactly. It sort of impart some of that into the mask.
It's fascinating.
But JJ wanted just to add a little touch more of the grill. So if you step to the next image, Brian, this is the final image that was taken on, final model that was taken onto set. You can see there's a bit more of the grill in his mouth. This actually came from, the maquette was a smaller scale. And rather than resculpt the whole thing, we had it 3D scanned and then printed it a larger with the correct scale. And I then reworked that, added some more details and melted bits of plastic into it and painted it up, and that's what went to set.
Forgive me for even just getting slightly emotional on this, because this brought grown men and women to tears last year at Star Wars Celebration. This is exactly what I meant earlier, that you see something so iconic that is truly a sequel in one image. right? And this must have just given you chills to work on. I mean, just even seeing that image in the trailer last year was what an incredible Star Wars memory for so many people. That must have been a powerful experience for you to witness.
Yeah, it was. It was amazing, really. And it's hard to... I know, we're given these briefs and we start working on them, and obviously, you're working on Vader's helmet, and it's a huge privilege to, even go anywhere near that. So you work away, and you don't know if it's going to make it into the film or not, and then, to see it realised, and it's an amazing sensation. It's great.
Well, we have maybe about 7 minutes or so for Q&A, so I want to make sure that we get some time for questions in here. These images are just amazing. This is a great opportunity to speak to some of the creature designers, concept designers. If you have any questions, we'll set a microphone up right here and right there. Yes, right here.
Hi. I have 2 questions, if that's okay. So first of all, to talk about creatures in the movies, it seems to me that thinking about the actual filmmaking restrictions that there were, in the original trilogy, I feel like we get a lot of mammal creatures. We get Wookiees, we get Ewoks and Wampas and kind of Tauntauns, that kind of thing. And in the prequel trilogies, with the CGI, they got the opportunity to maybe do more reptilian and amphibious creatures. And I was wondering, is that something that you recognize as designers? And is that something that you were aware of when working on Force Awakens? And then I have a second question. As well.
Well, hold the second question, because that was a great first question. What do you think?
I suppose, at a sort of technical level, with the prequels, hair was, I don't know how good hair technology for CG was at that point, so maybe it lent itself. At this stage, I think we can do what we want. We cover, it's all practical, basically, from our point of view, so I don't think it was really a consideration. I don't think I remember thinking about that distinction between the 2 movies, but I do see what you're saying. Do you?
Yeah, we were very much aware of the love, the original trilogy, and JJ really wanted to capture that look, and that's what we would always reference back to. And as I said before, designing a creature, you think of it, placing it in those previous films, and does it sit within that? And it maybe wasn't a conscious thing that we're thinking of the sort of more mammal or the hairy or reptilian, but...
I think we tried to break it up, hey, we need some hairy ones, we need some scaly ones, we tried to get actually some variety, so...
And do you have a quick second question?
Yeah, pretty quick. It's kind of almost a bit of a obvious question. I'm not going to ask you what's your favorite creature, but just... No, don't worry. But just... I suppose you get some creatures who kind of just you see in the background. You get some creatures like Maz who are really key characters. But they're also in the Star Wars tradition, there are often these set pieces where you have these really lovely sequences. And for me, my personal favorite is the arena in the second movie with the 3 different creatures and then Padme, Obi-Wan, and Anakin. And do you have a favorite kind of set piece sequence that features the creatures heavily?
In Force Awakens or the whole
In any
Star
of them,
Wars?
in all of Star Wars.
Well, in Force Awakens, in Maz's castle, we took one of the designs, and the idea was to create like a fixed expression on them. So there's one guy like laughing his head off, and another guy with a bit of a sneer. And the idea was the camera would just pass by those and just capture that moment. And it's something that just worked really well. And although they've got these fixed expressions, they're not moving. The guys performed them so well. I don't know if you see him in the film that much, but it was something that just, it was a lovely, something that's worked really nice.
Yes, right here.
Yeah. Hi. I just wanted to ask, do you have any designs that you did for the film but never made it into the film that you wish made it into the film?
Well, there was hundreds.
There was
hundreds and hundreds of drawings.
Make it into the film.
Yeah, I still got one I'm trying to push in all the other films. Every time we do one, I'm trying to get him in. Maybe, yeah, maybe one day, but he's really cool. But
interesting. We should say this. I mean,
is it interesting?
No,
it's interesting.
even some designs that are our kind of favourites, we then offer it up for the next movie. So there's some designs that...
Yeah, that creep over.
Yeah, or if they didn't work out the first time, we can then sort of develop that design and push it a bit further. So even if it doesn't work out the first time, there might be room at a later date.
There are creatures in the upcoming films which didn't make it into this one, which we've kind of gone back to and taken our favourite ideas and sort of reworked them into the next ones.
So maybe we'll have you back here in a couple of years to do this again?
I hope so.
That'd be great.
I hope so too. Hey, please join me in thanking our panelists today. This has been really great. Thank you so much, you guys. And Phil, you're signing your book a little later. Yeah.
Yeah, at the Abrams Chronicle table, at their booth, I'll be signing at 1 p.m.
So go check out Phil at the booth at the Abrams booth. We're signing at 1 p.m. Thank you so much, you guys. This has been a fascinating look and a fantastic film.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
we'll
everybody.
see you really soon.